Welcome to the Knowledge Entrepreneurs Show, where we celebrate the innovators driving change in the education industry. At Edison OS, we've worked with over 500 knowledge entrepreneurs to turn their edtech ideas into profitable businesses. Hi, Lindsay. Good morning. Welcome to the Knowledge Entrepreneurs Show. Thank you so much for taking time out to be here with me today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to dive into today's conversation.
Likewise, it's a pleasure having you here. So, Lindsay, I was, of course, I went through your Instagram page before I thought, you can come onto the show and add value. But I, deep dove into your website, your Instagram page since yesterday. And before we, talk about what and how you do things, I've just got some basic questions, right? Your Instagram bio says you are a behavior coach helping educators regain their authenticity to transform behaviors. Could you elaborate on that a little, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think as, educators, we are faced with a lot of different behaviors in our classrooms, in our school settings. And something that I aim to do is really work alongside teachers. So, I really resonate with the word coach because, just like a sports coach, right? They're there. They're there through at the beginning, they're there through practices, they're there at scrimmages, they're there at games, they're there after the season. It's not, I don't love to do like one and dones, right? I don't love to say, hey, here, do this and you'll be great. Like
Right,
I want to
right.
coach teachers through the process because behavior is so complex. And so primarily I'm coaching on how can the adult regain control of who they are, right? That authenticity that they bring into the classroom, that's their true power, right? That's where their energy comes from. It's so often the behaviors of others, primarily our students, but a lot of times too, it's our colleagues, right? In the door, in the classroom next door, or our administrators or our parents. So how can we transform behaviors, including our own, and still remain who we are? And so that's really what I aim to do is give them a different lens to understand behavior through, both for others, but also always coming back to themselves so that they know who they are in the face of these challenging moments.
Got it. And, on your website, it says after years of stress, when I was reading about yourself, on your bio page, it says that after years of stress, turmoil, and burnout, and years of trying all the things to not feel that way, what are these stress, turmoil, and all that? See, because please help me here a bit, because I'm thinking from a teacher's point of view. Teacher is just going to go into classroom and teach, and I'm sure as a teacher, what you're talking about. Can you tell me what exactly you're talking about here? What's all that you're going through, and you found out, you're like looking for an easier way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that kind of even just perspective that you just brought is what leads to a lot of the stress that teachers feel, is because when we go to college, when we're at university learning how to be
Right.
teachers, that's what we're taught. We're taught here's how to do a lesson, here's how to most effectively communicate, here's how to do this.
Right.
We're not really faced with, okay, but you're going to have a student that's, parents just passed away over the weekend, and now you've got to be that comfort for them. Or you have a student that is throwing and hitting and kicking, and because that's their form of communication right now. You're going to have parents that are emailing you before, during, after school, and you've got to talk to them. You're going to have administration that's going to say, hey, we're doing this new policy and that new policy. You're going to, and I could go on for an hour just on the things that lead to that. And so when you are in the classroom, you have so many variables coming at you. And if, for me, I didn't know who I was. So at my core, I had no idea who I was. And so I then was trying to figure it all out in the midst of all of these pieces. Does that make sense?
Totally. Thank you so much for sharing this, because, for a lot of people who might think like me, this opens up so many things. These little situations that will put you off track with the plan that you go into your classroom, like you mentioned, be emotional or, disrupted students. Great. Now, Lindsay, can you walk us through, the points where you identified? How long did it take for you to realize that, you're doing something that you're not really comfortable with? There has to be a point to acknowledge that you have a problem, you are faced with certain problems, and how did you go about fixing these stuff?
Yeah, so for me, it's the irony is it came pretty quick. I about 3 months in. So I'll kind of give a little bit backstory too. So I from second grade, it was I'm gonna be a teacher. That was my kind of mindset, my path. My family moved from Canada to Buffalo, New York in second grade, right before second grade. And that teacher for me was my core. She was the thing. I'm in a new country. I don't sound like the other kids. I was actually a little bit already behind, so to speak, because we had learned different
Right.
things. And she made me feel so welcome. She never made me question like anything. And I held on to that. And so fast forward, right? It's, college or high school. I'm like, well, I'm just going to be a teacher. That's just it. Like I didn't even give any other thought. And so I went to school, right? I went to college to be a teacher. And here I am. I find myself in my first classroom. And like 3 months in, I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I was
Right.
already like, what the heck though? This is my life path. This is my calling. This is what I'm passionate about, but I can't do this. And I had the thought at 3 months. It took me quite a bit longer to start making changes, because
Right.
what happened is I went on the chase, I like to say. And I think this is something we do kind of naturally as humans, right? We seek the next thing thinking it's going to help us feel better, right? That
Right.
chasing
Right.
happiness, right? Well, if this just could change. And so I tried a lot of different roles. After 5 years in the classroom, I went to and I worked for a residential center, because I thought maybe that would be different. And that didn't really quite line up. So then I went and worked for a non-for-profit. Well, that ended up closing because of financial reasons. So I
Right.
did these hops, right? And finally, after like the third or fourth hop, I was like, this isn't changing anything. I'm still burnt out. I'm still stressed. My anxiety is still through the roof. Like I remember just saying there's got to be an easier way. And it
Right.
was at that point, which was about 5 years ago now, that I was like, I've been missing me. Like, okay, so I've tried everything externally. Now it's time to look within. And that was really the moment, kind of that catalyst to really change. It's not about the job. It's not about what I'm doing. It's about who am I being. So let me pour into me. So it was kind of a long time coming. It was about like a 10-year journey to figure this out. But I also wouldn't change that for the world either, because that's experience that's brought me to here
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty early on, but then took a little bit to actually make some changes.
Got it. Got it, Lindsay. Lindsay, if you can talk a little bit about what are the changes that you tried from an external perspective. Say, for example, you said you changed places, you went from one place to another. So what are the different things that you tried, just for people to get a perspective as to, these are the things that they might be trying, and they might probably, cut short their time thinking, okay, these are not the things that you're going to fix that.
Yeah. So it's though a lot of the things I did are probably things that people are doing, and I'll kind of go into detail about, but the key difference that I made. But like I said, I changed a lot of jobs.
Right.
I did go to different therapists or counselors to try and find somebody, and I'm all for that. Like I am 100% advocating for that, mental health awareness piece. I read a lot of books. I kind of like the self-help section in Barnes and Noble was like my place. I read a lot of books. Podcasts weren't so much out then. I was constantly just kind of searching for, right? I would literally Google, like, how do I like my job better? Like, how do I fall in love with teaching again? Like that was me Googling like, 15 years ago. Um, but the difference is I was doing all of these things to try to fit who I thought I had to be as a teacher, to try and fit this mold.
Right.
So I remember talking to my counselor about, okay, but how do I change this so people like me better? She was like, but
Mm,
that's not the point. Like that. So
mm,
the flip came for me was when I had the moment of, wait a second, I'm not changing me for them. I'm changing me for me. And so I still suggest read the books, listen to the podcast, go to counseling, hire a coach, like all the same things, but make sure the mindset you're going in with is I'm doing this for me so I can serve others with my
Right.
whole heart. I'm not
Right.
serving others to try to fill my heart. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Got it. And so say, for example, you gave a few examples of the challenges that teachers would face, when you think this is what teaching is, but then the classroom throws so many different things that you weren't ready for. So your stress came from the fact that you could still go and solve all those things. You could comfort a student who lost someone during the weekend, or you could deal with the parents who are emailing you, but that problem was solved, but then you were not happy while you're doing that.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
I knew, I'm a people pleaser at heart. And now I've learned, people pleasing is not the problem, but people pleasing, so I felt good, I felt worthy, that's where the challenge is, because I'm relying on fully giving, right, to others to
Right.
make me
Right.
feel how I just want to wake up feeling good, right? I want to wake up like knowing and trusting in who I am.
Right.
And I'm there now because of this switch that I've made. But you absolutely are right. Like, I could solve those problems. And if I didn't know how, I was one, like, I'm reaching out to people. I was constantly at conferences. I was constantly reading a new book, or just trying to figure it out. And I did. But the feeling behind, I didn't like it. Like, I still was like, this is not serving me. This is not, when I thought back to second grade Lindsay and why I wanted to be a teacher, I didn't have that feeling.
Right.
And I was dreading going to work, and I was, anxious about what might come. And now I'm like, it's not if there's going to be a challenge this week, there's going to be challenges, but I'm ready for it because I know who I am in the face of challenges.
Got it, Lindsay. Before we deep dive into, the major difference that you said, figuring out things to do whatever for the outside versus for the self. But before that, I just want to ask, probably where the expectation set wasn't accurate enough when you were young as to what a teacher is. The problem, does it have had to do with that as well?
It probably does. Actually, that's a really good point. I mean, I think through the lens of a second grader, right? We see teachers as especially if they're caring and compassionate, like, you
Right.
don't see the behind the scenes, right? I just see a teacher who loves her class and loved me, and made learning fun for me. But I didn't see the meetings. We don't see all the things that go
Right.
into, I think, any
Right.
job, right? And even as you go through, right? I think, in college, I did student teaching, right? You are teaching for 10 weeks, but it's still so controlled in a way.
Right.
It's not, you don't have the heightened expectations that when it's your class, right? This
Right.
is now your responsibility. As a student teacher, you still have your teacher. You still have your coordinating teacher. You still have your professors. You still have that support. You still have the label of I'm a student teacher, right? When you
Right.
take that off, it's like, I'm now the teacher. Like, that's a lot of pressure. And if, like me, I didn't have the belief in myself to be able to believe that I could handle that pressure.
Right.
And so I do. I think it's both, right? I think part of it is just we see what we want to see as we're growing up, and we hold on to the good and or the bad.
Yeah.
But primarily for me, I held on to the good. And teaching is for me, right? Like, teaching and coaching and serving others is for me. I just learned it's not in a classroom of my own. It's as a behavior specialist, helping, coaching other people on how to understand what I've learned along the way. So it's okay, I think, if your pathway shifts a little bit, that's okay. I'm still a teacher, and I always will be. It just
Right.
looks a little different than second grade Lindsay thought it would be.
Right. Right. Got it. And now, when you make that mindset shift that, whatever you're doing is for yourself and not for others, you're still going to be solving the problems, right? What does it feel like doing it from there versus doing it from here?
Yeah. So I think it's really important to remember it's always both, right? Like, I think so quickly our mind wants us to pick one or the other. Well, I'm going to serve others or I'm going to serve myself. And
Right.
I live in the land of and. No, we do both. We're going to have a service why. We're also going to have a selfish why. Because if
Right.
we are 100% serving and we're depleting ourselves, we know that doesn't last. And if
Right.
I'm only serving myself, I mean, I guess for some people that might work. That doesn't work for me. I mean, that's where, like, no, that doesn't work. So it's
Right.
both, and it's blending those together. And so if my mindset, though, is that I only serve others, then I'm going to eventually run out. So I
Yeah.
look at it as a way that, if I'm serving myself and I do that first thing in the morning, right? I mean, I do it all day, but, I really kind of fill the cup, so to speak, first thing in the morning, then I'm ready to share that energy with others. And so I love to think of it as these small shifts instead of thinking it as like one massive change that needs to happen. Like our brains
Right.
don't like massive change, right? We learned that over the last 3 years. We don't
Right.
love when we have to do a quick change that we aren't in control of. But I can control that I spend 5 minutes in my thoughts, right? I can do that. And if five
Right.
minutes feels too heavy, start with 30 seconds. Like it does not take, it actually takes, I think the more brief moments we do, they compound to those bigger impacts than saying, well, I have to sit down for 2 hours and do this and do this all to get to. No, you could do it 30 seconds at a time, and it is going to build your momentum and shift you moving forward.
Got it. Can you, give an example as to how these 30 seconds or 5 minutes can be? What are the different things that can be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started, my go-to is gratitude. I started, and the
Right.
reason for that is I've known about gratitude for years, right? I read The Magic by Rhonda Byrne, like I read The Secret, like all of her things, which is like gratitude 101. I had read it all. And I was like, well, I'm grateful. Like, I'm so grateful for things. But I realized I wasn't expressing that gratitude. I
Right.
was keeping it inside. I wasn't thanking people for doing things. I mean, other than like if they hold the door, I'm saying thank you, like those kinds of things. But I wasn't saying like, hey, just thanks for being in my life. Or, I wasn't thanking my home for comforting me, for taking care of me, for sheltering me from the rain, right? And so I realized, I'm like, all right, well, where can I start? This was how I started when I made this shift 5 years ago. I started setting my alarm first thing in the morning for 3 minutes earlier than I had been getting up before. So if you are
Right.
currently waking up at 6, you're going to set it for 5:57. Like super simple. Why 3 minutes? I don't know. I just like the number three. There might be science behind that, but that's not how I just go with what feels good.
Right. If somebody
And
likes 7, they can go 7 minutes
they
earlier.
can do 7. Exactly. You like one, do one. Like there's no right or wrong here. Um, and so I would set my alarm, and I didn't even get out of bed. I just literally laid in bed and I would just spew out things I was grateful for
Right.
until I kept that second alarm, right? I kept my 6 o'clock alarm. So until that alarm went off, I was just spewing things that I was grateful for. And if I got
Mm.
stuck, I just accepted it. Like, whoa, okay. And that even just practice of awareness of allowing yourself to kind of pause and be like, I don't know the answer right now, and that's okay. I learned more about myself in those moments, right? Because we're taught that like we got to do it for 3 minutes, you're going to do it. Like, no, be patient with yourself. And I think within like a week or two, I was like, all right, I got this. Like, here we go. It's okay if you repeat yourself. It's okay if you say the same things. It's okay if you do it very basic at the beginning. Like, just look around your room. Well, I'm grateful for these walls. I'm grateful for my comforter. I'm grateful for, my home. I'm grateful for my coffee, like whatever it is. But that 3 minutes changed everything. Because what happened is it kickstarted my day. So now I've got all these positive thoughts in my head. Now I'm getting up and getting ready for my job. I'm not thinking, man, I don't want to go in today. I'm continuing that momentum of,
Right.
I'm really grateful that, that teacher's helping me out by coming in and helping me with that lesson. I'm really grateful for this student who's teaching me new ways to try these strategies, right? You start to see the same conflict through a different light. And something I hold on to is if we're not grateful for it, we're not expressing gratitude, we're taking things for granted. And, sometimes it's the simplest things that really show us that, right? Like just a couple weeks ago, we were kind of stuck inside here because of the Canadian wildfires. Smoke had come all the way to New York. I think it's
Right.
gone
Right. Right. Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there was a couple of days where they're like, you guys, we really can't go outside. And it's like, man, I don't ever think I've shared gratitude for the air. Like that's not something that typically comes to mind. And I'm like, I really am grateful for clean air that most of the time we don't have to think twice. I can
Yeah.
go out and be outside and I don't have to worry about that. That's really phenomenal. And so when you start living that way and you start speaking that language, it really does make a huge impact. The other thing I will offer that's really simple is create connections to things you already do to add in things. Like, this is not a new concept, right? Some people call it habit stackings. I just call it connections because, and I love to use mirrors for this because we pass by, on average, probably like at least 50 mirrors a day, in our cars, in our homes, at work, like everywhere there's mirrors. And if you go to like a Target or a Home Goods or a store with a aisle full of mirrors and you go down it, this is a really powerful activity. Every time you pass by one, you're going to say something positive about yourself. You don't have to say it out loud. You can keep it internally. But what I learned about myself and through the work I've done is people have a hard time complimenting themselves. People have a hard time saying, I'm really smart. Like, I love my shoulders. I love my haircut. I love my eye. Like, people have a really hard time saying that because we're not taught that that's the typical way to look at ourselves.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if I don't love me, who else is going to love me, right? And so I had to really work on that self-love piece. And by doing that, I connected that to mirrors. So every time I saw a mirror, internally now, my loop is something positive about myself.
Right.
And that paired with gratitude just really helped kind of kickstart my own, self-growth journey.
Great. I think when you spoke about the air thing, it's what you're essentially saying is do not wait for something negative to happen to see the positive that's already there, right? So start identifying, be proactive about spotting the positives, not taking things for granted is something that I'll take away. What's interesting is you said you already knew that you were grateful deep inside, but then expressing that makes a difference. And another interesting thing that you mentioned was a student giving you a challenge or offering a situation that is of challenge. How you look at it changes because of this, is what you said. Instead of looking at it as a challenge, oh, this guy is annoying me, you're looking at it as an opportunity to learn how to solve that particular problem. Am I correct? Great.
Yes.
So
yep,
you're
absolutely.
linking all this to the small activity that you do as soon as you wake up, which is filling yourself with positive things. Great.
Yeah.
And it feels like, these are not really limited to teachers or teaching alone. This can be used by, I think, each and every one of them who are facing problems in their jobs. I think they can probably apply this.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's really, as much as I work with educators, because that's the field that I work in,
Right.
like, it's human behavior, right? If we really want to think of it, like it's our mind, it's brain science. It's all of these things that will help us remember what's really important, which is us. And that's the piece that I think gets lost in our jobs, right? Because we become the job. And I did that, which is partly what led to my burnout. And so I was like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm Lindsay, right? When people ask, who are you, right? That's like the number one question you often get when you like meet somebody. The top three answers are generally like where you live, what you do for work, and then something to do with like family relationships, like whether you're married or have kids or have like pets or anything like that. And for me, which is still common, like I still give that information, but I always start with my name first. Like, well, I'm Lindsay. Like, nice to meet you. Like, I come from, Rochester. I work as a behavior specialist. Like, I am not those things. I am Lindsay. And it's a small shift. But if we aren't recognizing ourselves by who we are, then we're quickly going to just find a narrative of somebody else, right? And that's when we start taking actions that we think we should do versus what actually feels aligned to us. And that's for teachers, doctors, lawyers, that's for any, that's for anyone, entrepreneurs. I mean, that is for anybody in the world because it's all about writing your own narrative and sharing your own story. But if you don't know it, which was I didn't know my story. So I was telling stories that I thought people wanted to hear, that helped me sound professional or helped me sound like I knew what I was doing. Meanwhile, inside, I'm like, I don't know who I am. Like, I don't know. And so it really took figuring that out for me to show up confidently, for me to say like, hey, I don't know that answer. Let's go figure it out together. And it allowed me to see behavior through a completely different lens than I ever had before.
Got it. But if somebody chooses to identify themselves with the profession that they're associated to, that's okay. But it's just to be conscious about that is the point.
Exactly.
Right?
It's what serves you, right? Like I always say, like if you are in a place where you're like, I love my life, like this is what I do and I'm like amazing, But for someone listening, that's like, I want to be more than, a teacher or whatever their
Right.
field is, but I don't know how. That's the person I would say, okay, we'll just start flipping that then, like, and say your first name and then what you do, right? I'm Lindsay
Right.
and I'm a teacher. I'm Lindsay and I'm a behavior specialist. Like, just flip it. You absolutely, but it's not when we define who we are by the things that we do, then we think we always have to do. And that's what leads to burnout
Right.
because we don't
Right. Right.
we
Right.
don't make time to rest or actually just enjoy nature or be, still for a moment. We're so go, go, go. So yeah, absolutely. I don't believe in anything being right or wrong. It's just what serves you. And if it doesn't serve you, then you have the power to change it.
Got it, Lindsay. So, Lindsay, going back to your own career and transition, so when you said that, identifying or realizing that whatever you want to do, you're doing it for you, that's what allowed you to shift your career path from in doing whatever you still do teach, but not within a classroom, but in a different way. So you eliminated things that you did not want or you did not enjoy. That's what it is, correct? Right.
Yep. And I think if somebody's stuck on what they don't want, you also know what we do want. Sometimes it just takes, we have to listen a little deeper, right? Like I knew that I did not want to teach in the traditional sense, meaning I didn't want a classroom of my own. I just, that didn't fulfill me.
Right.
But I also was like, well, then what do I want? Right. What
Right.
does, in the field of education, and it's behavior that
Right.
was my passion. Like I kept going home being like, why do my kids do this? Like, why does this not work and that worked and it worked today and it didn't work, or it didn't work today, but it worked yesterday, like all those things. And I figured out, I kind of put the pieces together and I was like, well, yeah, I'm not meant to be a classroom teacher. I'm meant to be a behavior specialist. Like, that's amazing. And so for everything, if we continue to focus on what's not working, we will continue to find things that aren't working. And so by flipping, again, flipping the script and saying, but what is working, or what do I desire? What do I want? Now let's bring that in, because that's where my passion lies. That's where my service lies. And that's what I love, helping others, one, find for themselves. Well, I also get to live that out myself.
Got it. Got it, Lindsay. Before I move on to the next topic, just to close the loop on this whole waking up with a few minutes of gratitude within the self, right? So what it essentially does is it kind of detaches you from all the other things that we think we are, and it allows you to just be with your core self without all that. So that kind of helps you be okay with, hey, you know what? This is just another job that I'm doing. Don't be so stressed about it. You can take a step back and move away from it.
Yes.
Got it.
Yep, absolutely.
It sounds very simple, but it is very significant,
Yes. And that's, I that is a motto, because I used to believe that things had to be challenging, right? To be purposeful. Like, and I go all the way back. I was a swimmer growing up. And that motto of like, no pain, no gain was like the motto of my swimming career, until I tore both my rotator cuffs. Like, that's a lot of pain and I'm not gaining. Like, I can't swim anymore. So as an adult, I was like, well, that's kind of a silly motto. Because I don't want to go through, like, it's not like I don't want to go through pain. Like, I know I'm going to have to experience pain. That's part of life, right? But things get to be simple and easy when I allow them to be simple and easy. And so, yes, like, I think it's actually one of the best compliments when I'll like talk to someone, and they're like, well, that seems so simple. Or, that strategy you suggested, like, it's so easy. I'm like, exactly. Like, that's what I love, because I don't want to make your life more complicated. I want to make your life simple and easy and ultimately fun. Like, I think we forget that as adults, like, we got to have fun too. Like, life has got to be fun. If you are not laughing every day and enjoying those moments, like, you can change that. And that's what I hope to inspire in others, that you can have fun in your own life. Like, even with kids, even with a job, even with like all the stress, like, you can still have fun.
Amazing. So, Lindsay, now I'd like to, talk about how, you shared about what you did, but how you did what you did. Say, for example, somebody who's finding themselves, in your position that you were 5 years in the past from now, yes, you've shared the tools as to, how this can be done, but then there are also a lot of things that come along with it, right? It could be financial commitments and stuff like that. It may not be that easier. How did you manage your transition Was it smooth? What were the challenges that you had into, changing your career path from a classroom teacher to somebody who's going to coach teachers?
Yeah, so it definitely was it bumpy. I mean, just keeping it real. Like it is not, I set out on this path and like boom, here I am. Like it has been a series of ups and downs, and that is life. Like I always say, like there are going to be ups and downs. Like that is a natural part of life. I aim for like kiddie roller coaster ups and downs rather than like, your Cedar Point, like huge ups and downs. Like those are scary.
Right.
Kiddie roller coaster, I can handle those ups and downs. But it absolutely has been a lot of, I aim for gradual growth, right? I
Right.
think, and early on, I remember thinking like, oh man, this is taking a lot longer than I thought, right? Because in my head, it was like, well, I'll do these things and everything will shift. And while a lot did change, we're always living, right? So now, okay, I know how to handle these problems. Well, now I got some bigger problems, and now this happened. And then, I had gotten to a place about 4 years ago, and I was like, man, this like I got this. And then we got pregnant again. And that totally shifted the trajectory again, right? Because I had my daughter who was at the time 7. And so very, pretty independent for a 7-year-old. And, my husband and I, and we were just kind of doing life. And I was like, I got this. And then my pregnancy was really challenging. So that added a barrier. And then, we had a newborn, right? She's now 1. So things are, again, moving at a different pace than they were. And so I
Right.
think it's be open and know that change is going to happen even after you've declared like, here, this is my journey, right? And it's all for us to learn and grow from. And so absolutely, there's been months that are like truly quote, like amazing. And then there's been months where I'm like, what the heck am I doing? Like,
Right.
I'm just going to go back to how I was. Like, I don't actually, but I do have those thoughts. I think the difference is I know that my thoughts don't define me. Like my thoughts are there, but I don't have to listen. I don't have to say that's true. I can say that's not true. See you later. And what is true? Like what is going to serve me right now? But yeah, absolutely. There's been the highs of the highs and the lows of the lows. And I also just remember you can't have the highs if you don't know what the lows are. And so this work, right? Anything we're doing to define who we are is not about only trying to get the highs or only trying to be up here, because I don't know what's up here without these. So we need it all. And it's just learning how to navigate it all.
Got it. Could you share, how you got your first teacher as your client, or someone who you coached? So how did that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So after about 3 years, about two and a half years, actually, I going through my own journey, right? People started to notice, like I had no intentions of being an entrepreneur, like none.
Right.
I was just
Right.
like, I'm like, I just want to change, right? I want to change for me. And I did that. And people started noticing more so like my close friends and family, because they could see it in my pictures. They could just see it on my face that I just felt better. They could see it in the way I was talking. And so they would just reach out and be like, what are you doing? Like something is changing. Like what is it? And I would just share with them, well, I'm doing gratitude and I'm focusing on me. And and I would just share. And they were like, tell me more. I was like, okay, and so that started really just me kind of starting to write down all that I was doing. And I did a course first. I did like a 6-week kind of mini like training course, if you will. And it was just 6 modules right on Facebook, like super simple. But I like put it out there thinking like, no one's going to sign up for this. Like, and I, within like 2 days had 12 people like ready. I was like, okay, maybe this is a thing. And
Right.
so I did that, and that kind of just led to different things. And so once I had done a couple of those, I call them mini courses because they're pretty simplistic. They're not like 12-week, anything major. I had people. Everything I do is because of what people have reached out to me for.
Right. Right.
And I had someone that was like, the course was great, but I really want to dive deeper into my own personal goals. Can you help me with that? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so in that moment, like one-on-one coaching was born. I had a
Right.
membership for a while. So everything's just been born out of what people are seeking. But it all
Right.
started because I'm like, well, people want to know, I'll share it out. But it really was just taking that risk of, let me see if anyone's interested and let's go with it. I had no name for my company. Like I didn't have a company at that time. I was just like, let's just see. And it's been a it's been a wild ride ever since.
That's great, as organic as it can get, because I see that you did not set out with a plan to do whatever you're doing. You just put out something very simple, whatever you wanted to offer. But
Mhm.
because you put out that simple thing that you wanted to offer, people themselves came back and kind of formed whatever you're doing. Now, it was because of the people that wanted things from you. They shaped your business, whatever it is today.
Yes.
Got it. Got it, Lindsay. Lindsay, when it comes to teachers, right? I mean, there are teachers who are teaching kids and then right up to, teachers teaching adults themselves.
Mhm.
Um, the people that come to you, the teachers that come to you, majority of them fall under which category? I mean, what I mean to ask is, who are the teachers that are most stressed? Is it the teachers that teach kids, or is it the teachers that teach teens?
Um, I think it depends on the teacher you ask. No. But I would say for me, and I think I think I attract people that are similar to who I was in the past,
Right,
right?
right,
So the teachers that I tend to work with the most are teachers that are more veteran teachers that have been teaching like at least 10 years, 10 to 15 years.
right,
And primarily I would say like elementary. I mean, students. I would say more elementary than secondary.
right,
So primarily like kindergarten to sixth grade. But it's interesting because when I first started, I was like, oh, I think this would really help new teachers. But, and I still agree with that. I still wish that this was like a course in, teacher prep, because I think it's essential and needed. But, it's interesting that most of the people that connect with me are, veteran teachers, which I'm a veteran teacher. I mean, I'm heading into my 18th year as an educator, because
wow,
I'm still doing that full time too, paired with this. And so I get a lot of people that are like, I want that passion at 18 years. Like I'm at 12. How do I keep that going? Like, I don't want to be the one that's like counting down the years to retirement. I'm like, that's terrible. Like, that's a terrible, in my opinion, right? That's a terrible way to live. Like, oh,
yeah,
well, I
yeah,
only got 10 years left. Like, that's 10 years is a long time, people. Like, we are not counting down, right? And so I am all about like, yeah, let's reignite that energy. Let's reignite that passion that you have. Because what I found from the people that I've worked with is it doesn't just reignite their passion for teaching, it reignites their passion for life. Like they're better with their kids, they're more present and patient at home. They're actually doing leisure activities for themselves where they never felt that they could before. And so it really spills over into all avenues and all categories. But I would say, yeah, primarily it's those teachers that have kind of been doing it, but are ready to just kind of maybe feel like again what they felt like at the beginning when it was super exciting for them. So
right.
we work to find that excitement once again.
Got it. In your case, when you began to work on yourself, you realized that, you know what, you don't have to be doing that anymore. And then you did the same thing teaching, but in a very different way. Now, for the teachers, who are veterans, who've spent 10 years, 15 years, who come to you, what is the path that you see them taking after realizing all these things? Do they change their entire path, or do they make small changes within their boundaries?
Yep. I think primarily it's definitely small changes, right? Like I said, I'm all about those small changes because I think they have big impact. Um, and so what I see them doing more of is prioritizing themselves, right? So when they sit down on Sunday to plan
Right,
out the week or to visualize the week, everything is purposeful. And so it's no longer like, well, I'm just going to stay at work till 6 o'clock because that's when I've always stayed until, but it's also not as simple as, sometimes in education space, it's like, well, just leave when your contract time is over. And I don't fall into an either or category. I say
right,
leave when it serves you to leave. And so, because to me, if you leave, say my day ends at 3:30 and I leave at 3:30, but I can't like mentally detach from the day and I take that home with me, well, then my
mm,
kids don't have my full energy. My husband doesn't get my full energy. I don't get my full energy. And then that's when you feel exhausted, right? Because you're still literally at work, even though you're at home.
right, right, Right.
And so I help them to see it's not about the time you leave. It's when you leave. Can you say, I did the best that I can do? I'm ready for the afternoon. I'm ready for tomorrow and whatever tomorrow brings. And I'm going to detach and I'm going to now go into, whatever is next, right? I call it mom mode when I leave work. Like, okay, now it's mom mode. And then once the kids are in bed, like it's, Lindsay mode or whatever it might be. And,
Right.
and so that's really, I think what I see the most in teachers is that they're putting themselves into the equation. And
Right.
then eventually they're putting themselves first into the equation. Like, because most of the people, when I start working with them, they're not even in the equation, right? It's everybody else. And so
Right.
it's like, okay, we got to fit you in somewhere. Even if you're towards the bottom at the beginning, you're not going to stay there for long. And then they see how they can do that. And even something that as simple as what time am I going to leave work today? It's you decide. Don't just leave at 3:30 because that's what somebody on the internet told you to do, right?
Right.
Don't
Right.
just don't leave at 6 because that's what you think teachers have to do to be a good teacher. Leave when it feels aligned to you and be able to truly leave work, at work so that it's not now, that cloud that kind of hangs over as you go into the other parts of your day.
Right. Got it, Lindsay. And let's say for all the teachers who are listening to you, of course, whatever you've said is got a lot to do within themselves. It's about, shift to the mindset. But do you kind of work hands-on with teachers? Like, let's say, for example, physical workout, you know how it happens. There's this instructor who's doing this and then a group of teachers doing it. For example, the gratitude thing that you said, for new people who come in, do you kind of, handhold them and, do it at their time? Does that thing happen in your programs?
Yes. Yep. So and each one is a little bit different, right? And that's one of the things that when I don't have, again, like scripted, so the courses are scripted, right? They
Right,
have
right,
information. But absolutely, as part of those, there is always, most of my courses are not just self-paced because I do believe in the value of communicating about it. And so while most end up being virtual just by nature of, then I get to work with people, all across the world, really. There's always a live component. And so while
right,
they might watch videos on their own, they might dive through the reading on their own, there is always a once a week or every couple of weeks, we're going to come together and we're going to talk about it. Because I'm
right,
going to then give examples. I'm going to then
right,
elaborate a little bit more. It's the same thing with one-on-one coaching. We meet, either weekly or bi-weekly, but I don't have like a scripted, here's what we're going to talk about week 1. Here's what we're going to do week 2, because we create that together during our first call. What is your
right,
long-term goal? And then I'm going to help you bring it back. Because that's the difference between me. I always say, like, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. We're not going to really dive into the past. We're not going to dive into that. We're going to look at where are you now? Where do you want to get to? And what changes can we make along the way to help move you in that trajectory moving forward? And so sometimes I work with clients for 1 or 2 times and that's it. Because they're like, I had one client that's why I use the leave work example, because she's like, I want to be able to leave work at work. I said, great, we can do that. We met, I think, 3 times. And I still check in, right? Like every now and then, or,
right,
we'll
right.
communicate through email and things, but that's all it was. It was 3 1-hour sessions. She was like, I got it. And she knows she can always reach back out, right? It's not like you're with me for 6 months. You're not with me for a year. Like you can be, but it really is. You could be with me for 1 and we could talk about it. And you're like, okay, now I got it. Right. I love to cater to or individualize to people because sometimes you don't need a whole year with somebody.
Right.
Sometimes you just need some clarity on what do I do first? Or what do I even want to do? Right. And so, hopefully that answers your question that yes, like my goal
It
is
does,
to
yeah.
really be there and then fade myself so you feel confident and empowered to live your best life on your own terms. Right. But absolutely, I'm there to give examples, there to kind of help I ask a lot of questions to help them come up with what's really going on here.
Got it, Lindsay. Because I was going to ask you, how many hours does it take for a teacher to kind of achieve? And then I think you answered the question in whatever you said previously about depends. For some people, it could be three sessions with you. For some people, it could be a little longer. But then it's all about getting there in their own way. Now, there's this whole coaching thing, right? You see a lot of coaches today. You were not trained to be a coach. You were training from a very young age to be a teacher. And how did the transition from being a teacher to a coach happen? What are the steps, the efforts that you took to do that, make that happen?
Yeah. So I think they're very similar. I think that, yes, I did not go and get coaching specifically, but I think through my certifications. So one of the certifications I have is I am a board certified behavior analyst. So I'm deep in the knowledge of behavior and why we do what we do. And with that, I then have done a ton of other supplemental, reading and work on what is the best way to effectively communicate with others, because I really think that's what coaching comes down to, is the ability to communicate and connect with others.
Right.
And so I think it's twofold. I do a lot of teaching, right, in the courses, in the one-on-ones. Like, I am teaching concepts, I'm teaching this information, but then it's more, I use a lot too. I mean, I was in sports all growing up, so I have, some of my favorite people were my coaches. And so I think back to, okay, my swim coach didn't teach me necessarily to swim. Like, once I was in high school, I knew how to swim. I knew what to do. But what did he actually do? He inspired me. He made me believe that I could do it.
Right.
He was strategic on the practice, on the skills we did at practice, right? And that's what I look at, especially in my one-on-ones. It's like, I bring in different strategies to really hit at both the individual. Like, once I get to know them better, like, it's like, oh, okay, no, I think she'll really resonate with this because, of this, or we're going to try this together. And if it doesn't work, we're going to do this. So it really is utilizing all of the information that I've learned. And I think something that's important, for anyone listening that might be thinking like, I would love to do something like that, or, whether it's in the education field or not, it's like, don't let labels like stop you from taking that next step, right? Like, it's okay. Like, if you don't have the quote unquote, like, I'm not saying go say you're certified if you're not, or go do this if you're not, but don't let the label of, well, I'm not that yet, so I'm not gonna do. Does that make sense? Like, I believed I was a coach because of the experiences I had, and now based on all that I've done, like, I'm fully confident saying I'm a coach. But if you don't have that yet, you can still say, like, I'm a coach and I'm working towards this, right? Now, very different. Obviously, don't go say something like, I wouldn't say like I'm a doctor, because I'm not, right?
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we allow labels to hold us back a little bit, and it's like,
Right.
no, like, you've got a gift to share with the world. Like, share it out there, and don't be afraid of what others are going to think, and they're not going to say, well, you're not a coach because you don't have this certification. No, it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things.
Got it. You did say that, you've done certifications and a lot of supplemental stuff to kind of, on your journey in becoming a coach. But it's one thing to do that, and then it's one thing to actually coach somebody when, that first person comes. What were your, not assumptions, what way you would have had a certain imagination, okay, this is how it's going to be, but then it might have changed. How has that happened? What are those changes that you've undergone yourself as a coach?
Yeah, so I think I had gone through a lot of coaching programs myself to get to where I am, right? And so I think inherently I kind of thought like my coaching would be like my coach was to me, because that was my experience, right? And I was like, and she always seemed to have an answer. So I was like, well, I'll always have an answer if somebody, has it. And I remember one of my first clients, I was like, I don't know that answer. And, but again, I was like, I was reminded why I do this work. And it's not to always have the answer, because I don't want to be a coach that's just telling you what to do. Like, that's not what I, desire. And so one of the things I was really proud that I did do before I started clients is I have a strong mission. I have a strong vision. I have a strong definition of who I am as a coach, because right in there, it is not, I'm going to tell all the answers. It's, I'm going to help empower others to, I think it's like answer questions they have of themselves or something like that. Like, so they find the answer. I don't want to just give it, because then they're just me. Right. But I think the thing that's just honestly shifted the most is just my own confidence. Like, I just remember those first couple of sessions being really nervous before I would like log on to Zoom. Like, I would just, a lot of like butterflies, a lot of like, oh, what if I don't know the answer kind of thing. And now I still don't know all the answers sometimes, my clients will ask me things. I'm like, that's a great question. Like, let's unpack it. Let's figure it out together. But I don't have that like nervous. I get excited now. Like I don't have that nervous energy. I'm like, let's do this. Like I'm excited. Let's hop on. So I think that's been more the thing that's really changed is just my own confidence and my ability to coach, as I've seen results, if my clients have gotten results, as I too have learned different things,
Right.
working with coaches myself, right? I think that's important. Like I'm a lifelong learner. I always will be. And so I'm constantly like, what's next? What else can I learn? What other thing can I learn to bring to my teachings? So I think that's just really what I've learned the most as I've gone through this process.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay, for that. I think it's about getting used to these things. What you thought before could be a problem, now you know that this is how it is, and then being comfortable with that. And that happens only with time as you do it.
Mhm.
One final piece of this whole thing for me that I'm going to ask you now, as a coach, there's this whole tech thing, right, that connects you with your clients, and it's kind of become a very important part of anything anybody does. But in tech, when it comes, there are two things. One is the way you use tech to for operating your business, and then the way you use tech to expand your business, getting new people. So, where are you with tech as far as these two things are concerned?
I'm still I think in the learning phase. Like I am definitely in that beginner phase. And like I said, I kind of feel like I had this momentum going and then the baby happened. And I
Right.
feel like those 2 years, like I still was kind of present. I still would kind of check in with people, but I was not like, I was not actively, recruiting. I
Mm,
was not actively doing courses. I was just kind of like there, which
right.
is all I could do. And that's okay. And so now that I'm kind of back, rebuilding this speed, rebuilding my momentum, it's actually one of the areas I'm looking at into how do I streamline things more? How can I create some better systems? How can I use this to help me? I mean, so right
Right.
now I am like most basic of basic terms of like I use social media. I'm using like Zoom and email, all the basics. And I think that's okay. Like when I started my podcast 3 years ago now, like I had no idea. I was like, I'm just gonna buy a microphone, I'm gonna figure it out, and I just did it. Like I remember recording that first episode, like I don't know what I'm doing, but we're just gonna give this a shot. And here I am 3 years later, like I still am using the more basic things, but each month or each couple months, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to kind of enhance this, right? Like, okay,
Right.
now I'm going to do some better editing. What else can I do? Okay, I'm ready to get a different microphone. I'm going to do some more research, right? And so, but it's like, again, start small and then build, just start, right? So that's
Right.
where I kind of am with tech. I feel like it's like I'm at the starting point, just kind of learning what else is out there so that I can continue to enhance. But yeah, we keep things pretty simple on that realm.
The teachers that reach out to you for help, who would like to be coached by you, uh, I mean, are they mostly referrals, or do they come from your Instagram posts?
Yeah, they're primarily, I would say, social media based. So
Right.
either Facebook or Instagram. And I think the cool thing that I didn't really realize would happen. I mean, I think I probably like hoped it would happen, but is that I have a pretty strong following, which is pretty amazing. Like I have a smaller community in terms of numbers, if you will, but they're my powerhouse. Like they are, I have some that have like done everything I've put out. They're like the first ones to sign up. They are like anything. My journal went live, they had it purchased that day. Like, it's those pieces, which is just really cool to have that, that concept that I'm building a community. Like it's so much more than the services I provide. Like, yes, I provide them to solve problems, and that is great. But it's really to build this just sense of community and connection that I think can often be lacking.
Right.
But yeah, I would say primarily from social media,
So,
and most aren't local. I don't think anyone's been local. It's really been just people across primarily the United States and Canada, which is pretty cool.
wow, nice. And when it comes to onboarding your clients, or your mentees, if I can call them that, and continuing that whole process, and then keeping in touch once it's all happened, right? What are the gaps you think you have with respect to tech right now that you'd like to see fill going forward?
So I think one area is really just, I think, streamlining, what is like available. Like right now, there's a lot like on my website that I feel like is choppy, that it doesn't necessarily link to things. In my head they do, but like when I actually go through it, like a user, like a participant, I'm like, that doesn't really fit. Or, right now I use Kajabi for my courses, and I'm like, I don't love this and I don't love that, but I just haven't put the, time and effort into making those changes
Right.
to really just make it more streamlined, more automated. I'm learning to do that. I just learned to do that a little while ago with my emails. And so, I have like, working on the sequence and working on just all of that, so that it's not something every day I have to be like, oh my God, I have to do this for the business. I have to do this, but I can, oh no, that's already taken care of, right? I have that automated. Same things with, clients, like really doing more, not, I don't want to do like automated check-ins because that just seems very like robotic, but
Yeah.
just like having a better sense of, goal collection and how often are we going to review those, and really just kind of more streamlining those processes. But I know that will come with time, as I continue to build. But I would say those are kind of those areas that I'm doing. I feel like a lot of that like middle work, and trying to automate some of those things, I think will free up my ability to just create more content, and make those connections, which is really what, I want to be doing.
Got it. And checking in with your clients is happening through, is it happening on WhatsApp, email, or do you have a tool for that? Or does it happen
Um,
within Kajabi?
Yeah, so it really depends. So if it's during a course, I use just the Kajabi announcements, kind of tab or option. If it's one-on-one clients, it's usually either through email or messaging. But again, that's always something I set up with them at the beginning. So I will say like, hey, I will check in with you about once a week.
Right.
What's the best way to do that? And so that helps, keep that going. For some of the one of the programs that I run, usually once a year. I haven't run it in a while, but it's my 12-week program. It's my most intensive, I would say. So that one
Right.
actually I create a Facebook group, because I do like daily check-ins on that one. So I use, again, a kind of a different variety of those pieces, but especially for things that are one-on-one based, it's very individualized to what is going to work best for that person. If they're like, I don't want to be on social media, and have to check messages there because I try and stay off social media, then I'm like, great, we'll use email, or we can
Right.
text, or we can do, Voxer, or what. I know there's lots of options, so we make that work
Right.
for whatever the client is looking for.
Got it. And you have a tech person taking care of all of these things for you, or it's all just you doing everything from setting up your website to Kajabi and all that?
So it's me with help, I will say. So I had a designer, somebody else create my website. Again, I'm not tech savvy to create that thing. I have a hard enough time like updating it. But like the podcast is all me. I've had a couple different virtual assistants at different times, to
Right.
help me with certain projects, but I don't have one like long term all the time.
Right.
Just on where I'm at right now. That's definitely a goal for the future. But yeah, everything is really me, unless I outsource something for whatever the project is. But primarily it's me right now.
Got it, Lindsay. Lindsay, I think I've covered pretty much all aspects that I wanted to. Is there anything that you'd like to share? You thought, that could not cover from with the things that we discussed. You can probably feel free to do that now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we covered a lot. I think the thing I want to just hopefully share with people is, again, like, don't let those labels stop you, right? Like if someone had asked me 5 years ago, like, hey, you're going to be an entrepreneur one day, like, I'd be like, no, are you crazy? Like, what are you talking about? And, yet here I am, and I'm doing both, right? I'm still full time in my position that I love. And I'm building this, community that I absolutely love. And do I know where it's going to lead? No. And I'm okay with that. I don't necessarily right now have a 1, 5, 10, 20 year plan. I'm like, let's just build it right now. Let's just have fun with it right now. And I trust that it will become what it needs to as I continue to evolve. So I think if somebody is, listening and they're like, well, I have this idea, it's like, again, start small, like, and build from there. You don't have to wait until you've got it all figured out, because you'll never start then. That's really it. Like I said, I launched that first course. I didn't have a name. I didn't have a website. I didn't have anything. I had an idea, and I had PowerPoint that I knew how to use, and I had
Right.
Facebook, and that's all you really need. So I think just get started is my best, tip, and not to get stuck on some of those labels that we might, tell ourselves.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lindsay. It was amazing. Some of the things were very significant. Even for me, there's so much to take away. It doesn't matter if I'm teaching or not. Just for human beings, just to have their days a little bit more better. I think some of the things that you've said add so much value. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much.